I'm Tim Brandner. Welcome to Capitol Views. It's 40 years that we had operations of the Trans-Alaska Pipeline and all the benefits that oil has brought to Alaska. The question now, can we operate the pipeline for another 40 years? And I'm joined today by Admiral Tom Barrett, the president of Alyeska Pipeline. Thanks for joining us, Tom.
Thanks, Tim. Glad to be with you. Glad to be back in Juneau.
You know, the operation of the pipeline has been the construction of the pipeline was quite remarkable. The operation of it smoothly for all these years, bringing income to the Treasury, has been quite remarkable. But there are situations, there are times when the system has been vulnerable, particularly at low flow.
Sure.
We're operating at 25% of the capacity. And could you speak to some of those times that have been of concern?
Sure.
Admiral Barrett?
Yeah, constant. But it probably became most visible to me personally. I started in this job in January 1st of 2011, and January 8th we had a leak and a shutdown at Pump Station 1 in a really cold snap. We're moving about 650,000 barrels there, but still a lot less than our capacity. And it was a hard stop. We didn't spill any oil into the ground, by the way. So this was a leak on a buried pipeline that entered a building and flowed down into the basement of one of our buildings there. And so we had to do a repair and a bypass. And unfortunately, when we started looking at that, and we got vac trucks in, so we were managing the leak, but we didn't have a way to isolate that segment of line and cut that leak right off. And so we had to put in a bypass, but at the same time, we were stopped. We had 2 pigs in the line, which if the line was down hard for a long period of time would push ice up against, or could push ice against our strainers.
So the oil was not moving?
Oil was not moving. We were at a hard stop, and we didn't have an easy way to get back up quickly, right? So we have great engineers, and we know how to repair this, but it looked like it would take 3 to 4 days minimum to put in that bypass and run the system around. So we thought, you've got no oil going to the refineries in state. The North Slope is stopped, so they're having to shut in wells. There's not that much actual fuel supply in the state with the refineries down. So you've kind of got Alaska going dark because we've got a leak in the line. So we're trying to figure out how to do it, and our engineer said, well, if we could keep moving at a low rate, say 300,000–400,000 barrels a day, while we get this repair done, we could then get the line in, and at least that would keep us from freezing up.
Now, at the time, there was no oil moving, but the oil was exposed to the cold weather.
Absolutely. It was a cold snap, and the bowl above Fairbanks is a hard spot for us, and Thompson Pass down between 9 and the terminal is a very hard spot.
So how cold did the crude oil get?
The crude oil temperatures were probably down in the high 20s, something like that, 30-ish. You know, so the crude oil doesn't freeze. It's the water that's in the oil that can freeze. So we were running temperatures at 30, 40, 50 below in the interior then. So the dwell time, now we got it moving, but we had to get the oil moving. So we had a little dispute with our regulators because we hadn't been able to stop the leak, but it wasn't going in the ground. And from my point of view, it was fundamentally a risk management, where at the risk of the system, the slope, the state, with this hard stop, and maybe kind of see it in the spring if we didn't get it going. And we had a discussion with EPA. They said, well, there's a real risk to the waters of the U.S., which we didn't think, but they said, you're really taking a chance. I said, no, I don't take chances. We manage risks, and the risk of us having a problem with that is much lower than the risk of the harm that will come if we don't get this going. Now Senator Sullivan was DNR commissioner, was up there with me at the time in Fairbanks at our incident command center. So we got the permits we needed, we restarted, got the line going for a couple of days at low rate, and then did our repair.
That was enough to warm up.
It was enough to keep the flow going, and then we did a shutdown, another quick shutdown with the line repaired and restored. But what struck me is, what's not apparent is, that piping we couldn't get to. It was underground, it was concrete encased, it was not easy, but it was also going at a slow rate. It was what we call a dead leg. It was a segment of pipe that kind of dead ends there. And with low circulation, you don't get the normal flushing action and the biocides and the corrosion inhibitors that you would normally get. So when we all finished, and we got out of it thanks to a lot of great work by some of our people, welders especially, out of the trades there in Fairbanks. But what struck me was ultimately part of the reason we had the problem that we did, and we should have identified it and worked it sooner, but hindsight's 20/20, right? But because the flow was so low. If we had been moving 800,000 or 1 million barrels, we would have had much more circulation, and then start latching on to what the extent of problems we would be facing or were facing with the decline in flow, which was projected to continue and has pretty much continued. Right now we're moving maybe 550. At the time it was at least 100,000 plus more than we're moving today. But that's at the root of a lot of problems. So we started accelerating work to recirculate oil through our pump stations to add heat. We've added injection heat at RGV 65, fired heat. We've installed methanol injection ports about 6 places, so if it's a really hard down for us, and it may not be something on the pipeline, it could be weather, it could be something external to us, we can inject methanol antifreeze basically to make it easier for us to restart. The issue with that, though, is it's not good for refineries, so there's kind of limits to what we could do. But when you trace it back, our major risks, probably 3, Tim, is aging systems. It's old, we've got to keep it up. Declining flow in the winter up here, Alaska is still Alaska. And so the risk of ice and wax precipitation is still there and gets worse if our flow goes down. So it's important to keep that up. Third risk, which we didn't have to face years ago when the line was built, is cyber. So we're very attentive to cyber risk, cyber attack, and the security that goes with it. But our life is not easier, but the sustainability piece for TAPS going forward, we'll have to get very creative, innovative, and we have people working on it, particularly if we go through a threshold of about 300,000 barrels a day, with ways we could operate that line safely first and reliably at that low figure. But the better solution and the easier solution, the less costly, the more economic benefit to the state is not just us, but is if we can move more product.
Well, thank you, Admiral Barrett, for explaining. That was a very interesting incident and one that was sort of a wake-up call.
I think it was. Well, it certainly was for me. I don't know.
You were just new on the job.
But I'm glad to be there, and it worked out fine, and we've got a great crew that's working hard to keep us flowing smoothly.
Thank you, Admiral Barrett, for joining us.
Thanks, Tim.
I'm Tim Bradner. Thank you for joining us, Capitol Views.